What is going on, guys? How you all doing today? Rangovidsmango12 here, and we are finally kicking off the Ultimate Spider-Man series. And right now, since I know pretty much everything about Ultimate Spider-Man, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown on when this comic came into existence and all that. So pretty much the Amazing Spider-Man franchise has been going since around 1962, the 1960s, and in 1990s there was 30 years of continuity, and new readers that had been born, like the new generation, had no jumping on point for the Amazing Spider-Man. So Marvel thought, how are we going to get these new readers into the Spider-Man character? So they created Ultimate Spider-Man in the year 1999 to the year 2000, and that is when Ultimate Spider-Man was born, and this was the very first issue. It's pretty much a reimagining, like a modern reimagination of Spider-Man, and this is where it kicks off. And this actually came up to be one of the most popular comic series of all time, with Ultimate Spider-Man, and now with Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man. So now that we've given you that little detail, that little rundown of what this series is about, I think it's time to jump into it, so let's go for it. Alright, so the issue opens up with us being introduced to the Ultimate Universe and Norman Osborn. Now, it pretty much kicks off with him creating the spider, the Oz Formula Spider. So basically, like in the 616 universe where Peter Parker gets bit by a radioactive spider, whereas in the Ultimate Universe, Peter Parker gets bitten by a spider which has the Oz formula in it. So it's kind of like it's radioactive, but it's not. If you get what I mean, it's a little bit different. Slight changes, obviously, because it's the Ultimate Universe. It's an alternate universe to the 616. So there are slight differences. But yeah, as you can see, Norman Osborn is pretty much the same person. He's very, very businessy. He's a businessman. And he pretty much has no time for Harry Osborn, just like the 616 universe. So there are also incredible similarities to the 616 universe, which is brilliant. Now, we go over to Peter Parker. This is the first time we are seeing Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe. So imagine 15 years ago now, when people first saw Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe, in this comic. I mean, he just looks perfect. By the way, guys, this is Mark Bagley's artwork, so this is probably the origin, maybe not the origin, but this is where Mark Bagley started to get really well known because of his artwork in the Ultimate Spider-Man series. And the same goes for Brian Michael Bendis, the writer of Ultimate Spider-Man. So back when this started, Brian Michael Bendis wasn't really that well known, but now he is a well-known writer just because of this Ultimate Spider-Man series. So it kind of kicked off the fame for Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. Well, Mark Bagley was already kind of well known, but you get what I mean. Now, as you can see, Peter is horrifically being bullied in school. He's not obviously the most popular guy. We've got Kong and Flash right there. Now, this is what I love about the Ultimate Universe, because later on, Kong and Flash kind of grow up and they kind of stop being a bit of idiots. They kind of develop as a character. But as of right now, they haven't got to that stage yet, so we're going to have to put up with them being like this to Peter Parker. Now, we kind of get this little hint of Uncle Ben introducing Mary Jane and Peter, saying that they've worked on a project before, so it kind of puts this feeling across that Mary Jane and Peter are pretty good friends. I mean, even though they don't hang out together in school, they still kind of know each other from working together in school, doing projects together, and you can see that there's kind of a little bit of sense of chemistry right there between them, and that further develops, which we'll see in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 13. So guys, that is a key issue, so you have something to look forward to. Now, as you can see, we've got Harry Osborn, who kind of knows Kong and Flash, he's on the same team as them. He is kind of friends with Peter Parker. I mean, right now he's kind of friends, but we kind of get a little bit of a confirmation that he definitely is his friend further in the series, which you'll get to see as well. And now we go over to Peter's gym class, where the PE teacher even takes the mick out of him, saying that he throws like a girl and he throws like a woman, and then Flash continues to humiliate him, and yeah, it's not nice. Now we move on throughout the comic and actually go back over to Uncle Ben and Aunt May at their house watching Peter, and you can see that Aunt May is a very, very worrying person about Peter Parker, especially because he's bullied in school and he's gone dead quiet, and he used to be such a happy child. And Uncle Ben, he kind of just has this little bit of sense of humor. He understands Peter and knows that he's just thinking, he's really busy, he's such an intelligent guy and stuff like that. Now, one of my favourite things about the Ultimate Spider-Man series is the fact that Uncle Ben doesn't die until around the 4th issue, and I think that's brilliant because you really get to know his character, and when he does die, you really feel that emotional impact because you've got to know his character, you got to see him develop and just how he interacts with Peter, and then to see him get killed off 4 issues in really hits you hard. But now moving on throughout the comic, again, we get to see Harry Osborn at Peter's house, and obviously they're doing the homework and stuff like that, and Peter is like trying to teach him about whatever lesson they're actually studying. And Harry starts asking about all this cool stuff that he's got and how he actually managed to get it, and then it's revealed that he inherited it from the death of his parents when they died in the plane crash. So that's like a little bit of an emotional like poke at the character's Peter's bio, like his backstory and where his parents actually are. Peter starts to talk about how there's like this little equation that his father never completely finished, and Peter has been trying to figure out how to complete this equation for quite a number of years. And if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, but I think that is the equation to create Spiderweb. Now, I can't remember exactly, but I think we'll be seeing that equation further in the issues to come, so keep an eye out for that. But now, as you can see on screen, we've got Harry Osborn being treated like pretty much trash by his father. Like, his father is all businessman, like he doesn't really care about his son. As you can see, he says, "I am not babysitting, Martha, take your kid out of here," and stuff like this. And now we go over to the next day. We're visiting Oscorp Laboratories, and Peter is there with his science class, and this is the famous scene where Peter gets bitten by the spider on a school field trip. And as you can see, this spider is huge, and what you can also see is that this is the same spider that was injected by the Oz formula when Oscorp was experimenting with it and investigating it and stuff like that. So that's awesome, and it lands on Mary Jane, and Mary Jane brushes it off and Kong crushes it. So there you have it, that spider is now definitely dead. And that was the only spider of its kind, by the way, so that's also why Norman Osborn becomes the Green Goblin, because he wants to recreate that sort of like formula to give superpowers and stuff, but obviously it goes wrong and turns him into the Goblin. But yeah, so as you can see, Peter is blacking out, everyone's going crazy. The Flash and Kong are kind of just messing about, saying, "Oh, did you see how I crushed that spider," and stuff. But what I also like is it kind of looks like the symbiote is taking over Spider-Man there, you know, like how it faded to black. I thought that was like a nice little addition to the art. But now we're back on the school bus, going back towards school, where Aunt May is going to meet Peter Parker. And Peter and Mary Jane are sat next to each other. You can still see that chemistry between them two. And now Norman Osborn is being told of the accident that has just happened at Oscorp Laboratories, and of course this is extremely bad for him, not only because a child has been bitten by one of the experiments, but also because that could set the experiment back, because they'll get like lawsuits filed against them and they could be taken to court and sued and stuff, and that's what they don't want to happen. So Norman Osborn just basically says, keep an eye on Peter, make sure nothing happens to him, see what develops and see what happens to him, and we'll take it from there. Of course, going back to Aunt May and Uncle Ben, they are extremely worried for Peter because he's pretty much come home and passed out instantly, just gone for a sleep. Now, this is usually where the powers start to develop, when he's sleeping and stuff, just like in the first Sam Raimi movie. Now, we go back over to Peter the next day when he's in school. Kong and Flash are bullying him again, and Peter's spider sense kicks in just as Kong is about to kick him in the back, and Peter turns around and flips Kong onto his face. It is just pure brilliance, just even the art. Also, by the way, guys, just a quick little detail that I just wanted to point out was Mark Bagley's art is like this at first, but eventually it becomes so much more. And yeah, Mark Bagley just really nails the art in the future. Like, this is the first issue, so the art is kind of getting into it a bit, but eventually it becomes perfect. Oh my god. Anyway, so as you can see, Peter is going a little bit crazy, and he passes out again in front of his teacher. Luckily, the teacher is there to witness this. He just straight up hits the floor and passes out and wakes back up in the hospital. One thing I just want to point out really quick is, guys, and well, ask you, is do you see like the modernized Spider-Man yet? You know, like the modernized world that we're seeing in this comic? Like, everything's a little bit more up to date with our time instead of the old Spider-Man comics. So yeah, I just wanted to ask if you could see that. Let me know in the comments below, see what you guys think. But yeah, so also, we get like this little hint of Peter maybe taking drugs, but of course we know that he hasn't, and I don't think that would have been able to be put into comics back in the 1960s and stuff like that, unless it was to influence people not to take drugs. But Yeah, so that's how far we've come in comics. But as you can see, Peter has some really thick skin. The nurse couldn't get the needle in his arm, and she puts the blood down to be tested, and Norman Osborn's like right-hand man actually walks in and picks it up and brings it back to Norman Osborn. And Norman Osborn actually runs it through his computer, has a look at his blood and see what's going on, and pretty much comes to the conclusion that Peter is going to die. How crazy is that? Especially in the first issue, Peter is already said to be dying. I mean, what? Now, in case some of you guys don't understand with what Norman Osborn just said to his right-hand man, basically, his right-hand man is going to try and murder Peter Parker, because if you think about it, if Peter just randomly dies, then they're going to trace it back to Oscorp and say that the spider bite caused his death. But if he's murdered, then they can't exactly say that. So his henchman goes to run over Peter, and his spider sense kicks in, and Peter backflips over the car in this awesome panel on the comic, which I thought was awesome, and especially the art, just the way it's shown, is brilliant. And well, I keep calling him, he's not Spider-Man yet, what the heck. Peter runs over to make sure the guy is okay, and then his spider sense goes off again, and as you can see, he's pulling out a gun. So before the guy even has time to turn around to look at Peter, he has already sprinted off into the distance, and that is where we come to the realization that Peter's powers have started to kick in. He's a lot faster, he's got his spider sense, he just backflipped over a car, for God's sakes, and that is where Norman Osborn starts to realize and say, I do not want to kill this child, I want to study him, abort the mission, abort. And that is where everything starts to kick off, and this is what I love about the comic, because Norman Osborn is such an over-exaggerated character. But yeah, so also the characters aren't really that dumb. Like in the 616 universe, they tend to dumb down the characters maybe a little bit in the olden days, whereas now Peter actually realizes what is happening to him. He starts to test his own blood and actually does some research, has a look at some spiders, has a look at Oscorp, sees what they've been testing, what they're doing, and puts two and two together. And, well, not exactly puts two and two together, but you get what I mean. He kind of is a pretty smart guy, Peter, in the Ultimate Universe. He's got top grades in all his classes, so he knows what he's looking at. He knows what he's looking for. Now, as I've just said, Peter also has a look at his blood and sees what's going on. But Norman Osborn looked at his blood first, like earlier in the comic as we saw, and Norman Osborn came to the conclusion that he's dying. But Peter looks at his blood and sees something completely different. Like, to us it looks the same, but I guess it must look different to Peter. I don't know. But yeah, at least Peter doesn't think he's dying, at least. Now, we go into the living room where Aunt May and Uncle Ben are asking what's been going on with Peter. Why didn't he go to school today? And that's pretty much because he almost got run over by a car. Then he could sense that the guy was pulling out a gun on him. He almost got murdered, and then he tests his blood all day, and that's what's going on. And this is the first time that Peter has actually yelled at Uncle Ben or Aunt May, and then his fingers stick to the wall and rip pieces off the wall, which is awesome. I don't know how they didn't actually notice that. But as you can see, Peter gets sent to his room for what I think is the first time ever. And Uncle Ben and Aunt May are very understanding of this and just say that he's having a little bit of a strop, he's had a hard day. And then Peter wakes up from what seems to be a nightmarish sleep, and he's looking up at the ceiling, thinking about this spider bite and what's been going on with him recently. And he puts his hands and feet on the wall, and to Peter's absolute surprise, he begins to climb the wall just like a spider can. As you can see on his face, he's pretty happy about that with those pearly white teeth. And the awesome and epic ending to the first issue of Ultimate Spider-Man. As you can see, Peter is on the ceiling, and he basically just looks up and says, "Whoa, cool." And that is where the issue ends. Now, that is very reminiscent to how Miles Morales issue 1 actually did it. Like, so when Miles Morales first became Spider-Man, he climbed on the ceiling exactly like that. Instead of saying, "Whoa, cool," he said, "Oh no," because he knew that he just got spider powers. The fact that Miles Morales, when he first got his powers, did kind of the exact same thing, except with a negative attitude, was just brilliant. Now, that is the end of the first issue of Ultimate Spider-Man, guys. What did you think of this issue? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially because this issue is 15 years old. 15 years old. That is crazy. So, yeah, hit the like button, guys, since this is the first issue. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to have more issues to come in the future. I've got to do it, guys. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10. I thought the issue perfectly summed up Peter's life with the bullying and how pathetic it was at the start of the issue compared to the end of the issue. We're going to be seeing Peter's life turn around dramatically in the future, so keep your eye out for that. But guys, 10 out of 10. Go to the links in the description to follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in my next video.